want to talk about discussing politics versus discussing the Constitution, because the two aren't the same thing. The Constitution is what decides what we're even allowed to discuss policy-wise and what we're not allowed to discuss policy-wise. Then, once we are discussing those policies, now we're discussing politics. Unless you're discussing the potential for amending the Constitution, then yes, that is policy, but is policy consistent with the way permitted by the Constitution. You're not discussing violating the Constitution. You are discussing going through the legitimate process, which I have described as not only a potential growing process, but also a potential repentance process maybe at times. If there is something about the Constitution's past that is evil, or that hasn't been the best tool for good, there is a means provided for repenting, and that's the Article 5 process. Forced repentance isn't repentance. That's punishment, it's tyranny, and it's not part of God's plan. God's plan is maximum freedom. That way we may all be accountable for our own sins in the day of judgment. Okay, so the Constitution, when you read it, I've given my 7 P's before: the proper purposes, the people's consent, the proper purposes, the positions of power, the powers enumerated, the procedures to validate the exercise of those powers, the powers prohibited, and the promises guaranteed. Well, let's look at 3 aspects of that have something to do with politics. There are the powers prohibited, there are the promises guaranteed, and there are the powers enumerated. To discuss the powers prohibited is to straight up just discuss violating the Constitution, unless you are discussing the Article 5 process and consider changing that prohibition through a legitimate means. To discuss the promises guaranteed, it's appropriate to discuss it, how to approach keeping that promise made. And so there's a little bit of politics there. But overall, a promise guaranteed is a promise guaranteed. Shall protect from evasion. Shall do this. Shall do that. Shall guarantee a Republican form of government, right? Following our Republican form of government, period, in all cases. No administrative state, no judicial supremacy, none of that stuff. So where's the majority of the politics? Where should those be? The majority of them should be in Article 1, Section 8. Sure, there are the implied powers that I've covered before in Article 1, Section 4, Article 2, Section 1, Clause 4, I think, with the elections clause for the president, Article 3, Section 2, Clause 2, where Congress might decide to limit judicial jurisdiction, some of those kind of things. However, the majority of politics that should be getting discussed should revolve around powers granted in Article 1, Section 8. And other than that, acknowledgement of the laws of nature and of nature's God. You don't want to be violating natural law just because you think you can get away with it. So, if you are discussing those things, you have to know what those powers are. And don't try to expand the meaning of general welfare and common defense. Those are limiters for the purposes for which the tax dollars may be spent. Immediately followed up with the powers that are related to general welfare and the powers enumerated that are related to common defense. And then at the end, you've got your bookend on Clause 18 saying, if there's anything that Congress really needs the power to do in order to carry out their enumerated powers, they're also allowed to do that. Okay, but it has to be both necessary and proper to the foregoing powers. It's not just something you like, it's something you want to do. Not just something that got enough votes. Doesn't matter. Tyranny of majority is a real thing, and our Constitution, the Republican form of government, it was created to guarantee the avoidance of that. So, discussing the limits of the Constitution is not discussing politics. That's discussing the boundaries for what politics is even allowed to touch. Okay? There are certain things, think about it for yourself, that if somebody discussed, let's get the government involved in this or government involved in that, you would be absolutely offended. Okay? in truth, if you're loyal to the Constitution, you would be absolutely offended at excessive discussion of the powers not enumerated to the federal government, and yet them wanting to create policies around those anyhow. Okay, that's it. You're not discussing politics when you discuss the Constitution. You are discussing the appropriate boundaries, and from there, you guys can have at it and see how we can approach exercising those enumerated powers. That's it.